Let's hear it for the man who took down Jim Acosta. My friend of over 20 years, I expect nothing less.
Thank you, Deal. It's great to have you at CPAC.
Before I question Matthew, I want to ask you all three questions. Are you canceled? Are you fighting for the men and women who are martyred every day by media hatred? Are you fighting for them? What? Yes or no? Over here, are you fighting for them? Okay. Now, third question. Are you going to proclaim God's truth about human life in the face of media hatred? Good.
That's a good way to get started.
Yeah.
I like that. That's good.
Well,
Those
Matthew, I have not shared any of these questions with you. Isn't that correct?
That's right.
So all of these are going to be a surprise to you, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Okay. Now, Matt and I are writing a book with the provisional title, Cancel Culture, for Tan Books. It'll be out in December. And so I am going to quote a line that Matt wrote in the very first draft of the first chapter, which I think is a great place to start this conversation. And here's what you wrote, Matt. Our American moment is when you refuse to wear their shame. What do you mean by that?
They're trying to make us all feel like there's something bad about us, that our politics either originated in hatred and animus, or that's what inspires us today. And if they can find any flaw in any of you, any little flaw, which, by the way, you all have, and so do you, Deal, and I have more, when they find the flaw, they don't have the humanity to say, hey, I got a flaw too. They say, oh, I found your flaw, so I'm going to stop you, cancel you, and shut you up.
And of course, all of us are racist now because we voted for President Trump.
That's right.
What do you think, why did you write, if we can demystify the lie that most Americans are racist, we can defang cancel culture?
I think it all comes down to racism, because I remember going on an MSNBC interview with another person on the other side, and this person just immediately started in on the fact that this person was a racist, that person was a racist, I was a racist, and it just took me back. I hadn't been called a racist so extravagantly, so publicly, and my mom is sitting in the audience. She understands because she didn't raise me to be a racist. Thank you, Mom. And she also understood, she came from a generation where Republicans were proud to stand for civil rights, and the people who teach us history and explain history on TV, they're lying to everybody by acting like the Republicans were the ones pushing Jim Crow and the Democrats were the ones saving us from Jim Crow, when it's just the opposite. We have to tell the truth, and we have to be proud of our history.
We have to be proud of what Martin Luther King taught us, that we're not to be judged by our skin color. That's what I learned, and I'm 71. I grew up in a segregated town of Fort Worth, Texas. I had to go through the learning process. It was Martin Luther King who taught me, but now he doesn't matter anymore.
No, it's the contrary, which is, if we're systematically racist, if you ever see me talking and you see my face turn a different color, it's the color of red, it's because when they say we're systemically racist, what that means is America is irredeemable. You never get out of it.
Deplorable.
Deplorable. We are a poison seed that we can try to make it better, but there's no way out of it. So to me, the other thing is that as an individual, God created you with dignity. And when they say it's systemically racist, what they're saying is, even if my mom out here in the audience or my sister even when you do the right and tolerant thing in a day, that's overtaken by the fact that the system aims at giving white privilege, and all of our individual choices of virtue are canceled out.
Right now, I want to ask you this question about the Democrats. Do any Democrats believe Genesis 1:27? So God created mankind in his own image, in the image of God, male and female. Do any Democrats believe that?
Well, I remember Joe Biden saying, we know how many genders there are 3. And I remember saying, just pausing, I was like, now that's very interesting. I don't know where that goes. But no, this is true, which is if almost anything can be my truth, deal, you have your truth, I'll have my truth, everyone in the audience has their truth, that's almost right in the sense that we believe that you inform your conscience and that what you come down to and what you think is right or wrong is your choice within a democracy. But of course, morally, that's completely flawed because you don't get to choose.
Can I define truth for you?
Well, you are a professor,
Please.
so you might be better.
Truth is the conformity of the mind to what is real.
That's right.
The mind is, when we talk about truth, truth is measured by what's out there that we're making judgments about. It's not measured by our feelings or our sentimental aspirations. Truth is determined by what is outside of us that we accurately represent in our minds and in our judgments.
And there's a source of that truth.
There is. God created an ordered nature. Read Genesis. There's order in nature, it's natural law, and it's all knowable. But you can pretend that it's different than it is, and you can live in delusion, you can live in self-abasement if you choose, but that doesn't make it right. Who is Mercy Schlapp?
She's my boss. Or, put in her own language, she's mi jefe grande.
What has she meant to you?
Mercedes Schlapp, she changed my life. I was one of these vagabond political people. It's true. You guys, okay, so you must know me. I was one of these vagabond political people. I was in Austin on the presidential campaign. I'm sleeping on an air mattress in someone's dining room because they took pity on me. I'm going back and forth between Kansas and Washington when I worked for Congressman T. Hart, and I thought I'd kind of be married to politics, and then I found a much better person to be married to. And she's a wonderful person.
What's it harder to be, president of CPAC or to work for Karl Rove in the White House?
Oh, I think I need a martini. I'm going to say this about Karl Rove. He remains a friend, and his wife is a dear friend. He taught me so much. And he is a brilliant person. And I'm sure he and I have our disagreements about the current moment that we're in. But I respect people who taught me so much. And as far as George Bush is concerned, I know there'll be different opinions in this room. My view is you dance with the one who brought you. And
Loyalty.
What'd you say?
Loyalty.
He gave both Mercy and I amazing opportunities. We had a lot of interaction with him. And I'm sure there are moments in the politics that we're in today where he might see me on TV and wonder why I'm saying what I'm saying. But I'm saying because of what you talked about. I'm following my conscience, which I think is properly formed. And I have great respect for that man, and I think he did a lot of good for that man. And he's an example of what happens in the cancel culture before we knew it, which is he was another Republican at the national level that, guess what, was completely demonized and destroyed and distorted. And that's what they do to Republicans at the national level.
You know, you talk about what you learned from Karl Rove. What have you learned from President Trump about the tactic of shaming to try to destroy your political opponent?
Okay, so you all know this because we all know we have flaws. And you just have to hang out with me at CPAC to see me maybe use some words I shouldn't use, and maybe sometimes I'm saying something to somebody that's maybe less kind than it should be. So like, we all get that. So we're raised, most of us probably of people of faith. By the way, Catholic Church was packed today. Congratulations, everybody. The Protestant service with Mark Walker, packed. The Shabbat dinner, packed. Faith matters here. But we're raised with this idea of humility and an understanding that we make mistakes, so that when we make a mistake and the left jumps on us on that mistake, what's the first thing we're taught to do? Apologize. Well, you once said something that was wrong one time. Oh my God, I'm so sorry. You start there. Donald Trump taught us, no. They're not trying to correct the record. They're trying to cancel you. So stand up for what you mean when you say things.
They're trying to scare you off the stage.
That's right.
The Equality Act. Ha, 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 ha. The Equality Act explicitly destroys the religious liberty of people of faith in their schools, Catholic, Jewish, evangelical, whatever, to teach them the truth about men and women. How have we gotten to the point where our government is ordering us to allow our children to be lied to and to actually believe the lie or act like it or else?
Well, let me just say, part of, and some of you, and this might be controversial to some, but part of my leadership of this organization, which even though we have what we talked about, the faith tradition that we're reinvigorating here, CPAC is not a religious thing, right? That's not what it is. It's more of a political thing. And part of what we did is to say, if you are a member of the LGBTQ community, you're welcome at CPAC. Come. We want you to speak. And Rick Grinnell was here, who I have great respect for, and he spoke on this stage. And I think the Republicans and the conservatives are the truly tolerant ones, because what Deal is saying is that they're using the subterfuge, and this is what they always do. They act like it's about being tolerant towards the gay community, but what it's really about is undermining, right, this idea that you can hold on to your biblical principles, both Old and New Testament, have it be a substantial foundational part of your life, and that as an American, we all understand that God gave that to us. He knit it in our soul, and they're saying, no. On certain issues, it starts with one issue, right, this issue. You can no longer claim that your conscience leads you to either do something or not do something. In this case, I have all 5 of my kids in Catholic school. I want them to be taught the Catholic faith. If the Catholic faith, or the Christian faith, or another faith can be deemed a hate group, and you're not allowed to have those views or explain those views in a classroom, I just don't think it's America.
You know, it's not just biblical teaching. From the beginning of civilizations as we know it, all world civilizations have begun with the assumption that there are 2 genders, male and female. This is not confined just to the Western tradition or the people of faith. This is throughout human history. And we've come upon a moment which I would have not even had a nightmare about in my youth. I wouldn't think it'd be possible. I wouldn't even think Rod Serling would have had it on the Twilight Zone at that moment. That we are now being told by our government that in the classroom, where the public or religious, you have to encourage your children, your little children, to choose their sex. I mean, it's totally ridiculous, and it's also repugnant.
It's a difference between an adult having legal choices and people being put in positions of power, separating parents from kids to try to teach them this ideology of kind of a genderless existence. And I think this dovetails into the next thing of conscience. And it's right now, and you all should get engaged as you've been on this, which is when you have the Little Sisters of the Poor, nuns who take a vow of celibacy, and when their charism is to take care of the indigent elderly, well past the age of fertility, no offense, Mom. What does the modern...
She never grows old.
She doesn't, I know.
Right.
What does the modern liberal say needs to be a part of that conversation between the celibate nun and the very senior poor citizen? Abortion and contraception. And they say that we're governed by kind of a strangely, mystical, religious experience not grounded in truth. What is that truth?
Well, the founders were guided by that as
right.
well. A Declaration of Independence, such as Thomas Jefferson wrote, couldn't have been written without it being informed by Western Christian Judeo principles. We are rooted in this. I'm not saying we're a Christian nation. I'm saying we are a nation whose founding documents reflect an embrace of the Western values of human equality, personal freedom, human rights, and the right to pursue happiness in your way, in the way that your conscience guides you.
That's right. And look, in America on all these questions, that includes adults being able to live their life as they wish. The modern conservative actually doesn't want to tell anybody how to live their life, whether it's sexually or any other way. We just want to follow the Constitution. It's kind of simple. Now, Deal, we have a big visitor who's going to be hitting the ground here at any time, so this is your final question. And make it really easy.
All right. Well, I went around the lobby this morning asking people what they wanted me to ask you. And person after person said, ask Matt, what are our marching orders? They're inspired by your fighting spirit, your articulateness in the face of these media folks who want to distort what you say, edit what you say. What in this room, they want to know what they can do to fight like you fight. And you need to tell them what they're going to do when they get home.
Saint Pope John Paul II reminded us to be not afraid. And that is what's going on in America. They're trying to make you afraid. They're trying to make you afraid that you'll lose your job if you have a MAGA hat. They're trying to make you afraid that your kids will be punished on social media if you have the courage to raise your hand and say you saw some illegal voter fraud. They're trying to make you be afraid if you believe that this is still a great country and that when you see people torching our cities and burning down churches and defaming cemeteries and defacing statues, that to say that that's obnoxious to you, especially when they go after cops, you might believe that Blue Lives Matter, go after you, that there's a consequence to be paid. And the problem is there is a consequence to be paid, and it can be quite nasty. And for anybody raising a kid, they know that more than anyone. And I would just say this, we have to start, each one of us, saying that this is the truth.
This will not stand.
And we are going to keep saying it.
Yes.
And if all of us do it together, guess what? They can't shut half of us up. They simply can't. If red states will be joined by people of goodwill who love the country, they will not cancel America. It's the truth.